Good day, everyone, and welcome to today's Black Health Trust. And now I would like to turn our meeting over to our founder, Dr. Randall Maxey.
Thank you, Dr. Walks. And we are going to have a very special guest in just a few minutes. But first, I want to say a word about a great physician and member of the Black Health Trust that we lost last week. His going home services are actually tomorrow. Dr. Ludlow B. Crary, who was originally born in Jamaica, became the first chair of family practice of Drew University and Martin Luther King Hospital, was a member of the National Medical Association and previous past president of the Charles R. Drew Medical Society. Uh, for many, many years, he was a friend and a mentor and godparents to my children. So we salute Dr. Ludlow Crary, who also had not only his MD, but an MPH, and was a person who loved his family. He's well known as a person who contributed greatly to the health of our community and had a great impact. May you rest in peace. But coming up to date, I want to introduce you to a person I met through Dr. Lawson. He's a graduate of Washington University School of Medicine. He completed residency in Illinois. He also trained in internal medicine and immunology. And I was very intrigued in my first conversation with him when he talked about fierce and total wellness. And he also mentioned something about the Daniel diet. So I'm very pleased to introduce to the audience Dr. James Thompson, MD, physician. We'd love to have you speak to us, Doctor. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here, and an honor to be in your presence. I've been brushing up on your history, and and it's quite impressive. And so, just thank you for the invitation to speak. I'm going to see if I can expediently share my screen here, so we can get right to it. Let's see, is this the right one? All right. This is in presentation mode. Okay, so the move some things out of the way here. So I'm going to be talking about, this is the wrong series. I'm sorry. Let me get back there, start over again. I had a Kickstart, plant-based Kickstart that unfortunately is still on my table. I've got to get that off. I do an annual 28-day Kickstart, and I didn't need all those slides. So the topic is eating plant-based, because really I've been very convinced for a number of years that that is the way we should be going. And when I use the term plant-based here, I'm speaking of eating mostly plants. I'm not going to give you a vegan lecture. I do happen to be a vegan, but I started out as whole food plant-based for strictly health reasons, because I noticed members of my family, most male members, weren't making it past their 60s. When we went to family reunions, it was loaded with women when I was young. And so that was the first thing I noticed. And then both my parents developed dementia. My father died a few years ago from Lewy body dementia, same one Robin Williams had, same type. And my mom passed away last year from Alzheimer's. And so the last 9 years of her life was complicated by that. So what's that got to do with being plant-based? Well, these are all really lifestyle diseases. Diseases that the top 12 diseases are really lifestyle. If you jump out in the street, get hit by a bus, of course, that may not be directly related to what you eat or lifestyle, but you look at all the rest of them, and they are basically lifestyle. The genetics, of course, plays a role, but we're finding more and more. And when I say we, I mean those in the immunology and genetic studies are finding that the influence after the blueprint they call it epigenetics, and the environment tends to play a larger role in your longevity and the quality of life. So why plant-based? For that reason, many studies have shown going past more than 20 years, a Harvard health professional study, a woman's nurse study, Seventh-day Adventist studies. All these studies can be looked up, but they all point towards plant-based being the best way to eat. That is, eating foods that are plant-based and not animal-based or related to animal products. And so I'll be trying to reinforce that concept as I go along here. Just a few comments on just how I got to where I am, a little more specifically. I'm going to proceed with that and go into the what and whys about eating plant-based and how to get started. And my main objective is to plant a seed or cultivate seeds. So I'll be planting a seed if you haven't thought about this at all and you're eating the standard American diet, which I'll talk about a little more shortly. I'll be cultivating a seed if you've already been thinking about this, if you just haven't made a move yet, or maybe you have made a move, but you're not quite there yet. So it started with me with my church, the Emmaus Community Church in the south suburbs of Chicago, with the Daniel fast about 15 years ago. Now, Daniel fasts I've found are not all the same. Many churches do participate in that, but they're not all the same. But ours was where you would not eat until after 6 p.m. every day. It started out as a 10-day fast, then as a 21-day fast. But then at the end of that period, at the end of this, when you get to the 6 p.m., you could eat, but only plant-based food. Couldn't eat anything processed, no alcohol, no caffeine, no candy, nothing like that, just plants that are whole and minimally processed. And so the interesting thing about that is we first did that 15 years ago. We did a 10-day fast, and that was the shot across the bow for me because I found out that within days of the fast, I was waking up feeling more refreshed, and my knees didn't ache as much because I was running several miles to try to keep my cardiovascular health up to speed. And I was ruining my knees running on concrete, and I was starting to have arthritis. But during that fast, after about the 5th day, I was waking up, my knees weren't aching. I was running with less discomfort. And a year later, we did a 21-day fast, and that's when it really hit me by the second week. Now, it wasn't a cakewalk. I felt miserable for a while because, Daniel fast is about prayer, not about food, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I was focused on the food, and I was, I was openly praying as I should, but inwardly I was just praying that the fast would end because I was missing a lot of stuff. But by the second week, again, I was experiencing minimal discomfort in my joints again. I was waking up rejuvenated. I found that my reflux, I have hiatal hernia and GERD, and that seemed to be diminished. And my blood pressure medicines became too strong. At first, I thought, why am I dizzy? Is this bad? Is this a bad diet? But then I realized I don't need these blood pressures to the level I was on 3 blood pressure medicines already for 20, going on 18, 19 years, and a cholesterol medicine. So it really made me think. And so in that thought process, I said, I got to research this because I have discovered, my eyes opened, that there's a big gap in knowledge here about nutrition and pairing it with prayer and fasting. I said, I got to look into this more. So I joined, I entered a course, a year-long course, 6 hours a week in integrative nutrition, School for Integrative Nutrition out of New York. And, here was, I was able, by getting on a plant-based diet, to shake off 4 medications. I was on 3 medications. One of them was combined for blood pressure, and on a medicine to lower my cholesterol. And within months, not years, within 6 months, I was able to shed all of those medicines. I'd been taking them for almost 20 years at the time, really more than 20 years. And so that really made me very happy because even though I'm a physician and I prescribed tons of medicines through the years, I just didn't like taking medications. They had side effects. And so I was very happy to get off them. But it was a revelation for me because for so many years as an internal, my background in internal medicine, I saw adults and children. Many adults I saw had histories of high blood pressure and diabetes type 2. And for years I'd been telling them, reinforcing, take your medicines. You're going to need these for the rest of your life. Your blood pressure pills, the rest of your life. Your cholesterol medicine, the rest of your life. Your diabetes medicine. And that was wrong. You may not need them the rest of your life if you change what you have on your plate and you adopt some lifestyle changes. And unfortunately, doctors are even to this day trained to treat diseases. We're not trained to uh, to focus on the root causes and prevention and how nutrition plays a role. Now, I'm saying that with a sweeping brush because things are changing. There are schools that are adopting now the process to inject in the curriculum actual nutrition education. It They say on average, where I've read that it's maybe 19 hours out of those 2 years of basic training. We call it basic training before you get into the clinic and to the hospital. Um, and that's not enough. It wasn't I went to Washington University in St. Louis, and I know I didn't get 19 hours of nutrition. I got maybe a couple of hours, and it was focused on hospital-based, ICU-based nutrition information. But the good news is that is changing slowly but surely. And I'm glad to see that there are some people, nutrition experts that are MDs, that are influencers, that are getting a lot of these medical schools to change their game. Now, CME, that continuing medical education, what doctors get after they've graduated from medical school and matriculated from residencies, uh, is highly focused on pharmaceuticals and procedures because they're sponsored by them. But we have to make sure that there's a nutritional aspect of that too as we go along. And so the important thing is to realize that uh, when we uh, want to assess where we are with things, we need to first examine how much food are we eating that represents plant-based food. And so we look at things as servings. And just to give you just a gross idea of what servings are, like an apple would be a serving, a medium-sized apple, a medium-sized banana, half a cup of cooked beans, 3 or 4 broccoli, average-sized uh, broccoli stalks. So those are servings. So if you evaluate over the last day, or say late yesterday, how many servings you had over the course of the day, the average for Americans is only 2. And really, it should be much higher to have sustained good health. And unfortunately, those that are maybe carnivorous eaters or keto eaters, they may go a whole day and eat only the food displayed here, food that's animal-based, animal products. And the problem with that is you get a ton of saturated fat, cholesterol, and even trans fats, which are banned in foods that are processed in this country. And the issue about these things is that they lack fiber. Only plants have fiber. And so studies have shown that people that go from, say, average of 2 servings of plants to more than 5 increase their longevity by 4 to 5 years. Now that's if you just increase the servings by 3 or 4 servings. If you're already eating 2 servings a day, if you get it up to 6, 7, you increase your lifespan by 3 to 4 years, by sometimes more than 4. But just think if you also went even further. Now, as I mentioned, the standard American diet is comprised of predominantly eating processed foods. And when you eat predominantly processed foods, like 2/3 almost, then that means you're getting a lot of salt, fat, and sugar. And that also means you're not getting a lot of fiber. The little yellow wedge there, whole grains, we don't eat enough grains. And that other small wedge there in the green, the vegetables, we eat barely over 10%. That's not enough to really foster good health. And that may explain why African Americans in this country do so much worse than other ethnic groups when it looks at the top diseases: cancer, heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, um, you name it. And so if there was a study that went different countries and ethnic groups and they had them lay out what they tend to eat over the course of a week or so. And this was not uncommon in the Black home. And this is this leads to you having, early departure in life because of heart disease, cancer, some of the most common ailments. And the more plant-based you are, though, the more you not only add um, years to your life, but you add life to your years. That's not an original phrase. That's a Dr. David Katz who's out of Harvard. Yeah, I think he went to Yale, and uses that term a lot in his talks. And so, lifespan versus health span. Well, it's important to understand that lifespan is the number of years you live, but health span is the number of quality years that the number of years you live where you're not taking a long list of medications and having doctor visits every week and having to have procedures. And we'd all like to have a long health span. The conventional medicine has made great achievements to keep people alive. The quality of life of my mom and dad, their last 8, 9 years was just not good. And it was something that made the quality of caregivers' lives not so good too, because, we physically and emotionally die with them. And so by making good food choices and doing and making lifestyle changes, you can change that. So the benefits of a plant-based diet are vast. It supports your immune system, your cardiovascular. The number one disease, the number one killer of people around this nation and most parts of the world is heart disease. So as Dr. Michael Greger, very, very highly known nutrition expert, says, it should be the default diet because it's clear that plant-based diets are superior to all others, including Mediterranean, in reducing your risk for cardiovascular disease. During the height of the COVID pandemic, the number one killer was heart disease. The number one killer of cardiologists is heart disease. The number one killer of oncologists, cancer specialists, is heart disease. And so there's so much you can accomplish, lowering your blood pressure, improving digestive system, lowering your risk of cancer, hormone balance. All of that comes together. Even your robustness during a pandemic. The British Medical Journal conducted a study a year after the pandemic, and it showed that people that were plant-based had a 73% less likelihood to have severe COVID. And those that were pesca vegetarian, that means they ate only fruits and veggies, but also fish, was the only meat they ate in addition, they were 52% less likely to have, and this is compared to the American people that ate the standard American diet, severe COVID. And guess who had an almost 50% increased risk of having severe COVID? Those were the carnivorous eaters, people that mostly ate meat as their source of calories. Even with autoimmune diseases, down in the corner there is Dr. Baxter Montgomery, a cardiologist, plant-based cardiologist that has his own restaurant hooked up to his clinic because it's so important that people go plant-based if they're having heart disease or if they want to prevent heart disease, but also it umbrellas autoimmune diseases. You can not only prevent, but you can reverse many of the autoimmune diseases by going plant-based. Now, the reasons why processed foods are so bad is because they tend, as I mentioned, to be loaded with salt, oil, and sugar, and emulsifiers and dyes. And these things can add up to poor physiologic health. And so we need foods that are less tainted and don't tend to hit our dopamine receptors and make us coming back screaming for more. And this slide goes into caloric density. I think if you really understand this concept, it becomes a little more clear on how we get hooked on foods and why we overeat in this country. And that is, the understanding is that it should be that oil, first of all, oil has 5 milligrams of per calorie. It has there in oil you have 5 milligrams. I'm sorry, the 5 calories. Let me back up. In oil, oil is pure fat, and in 1 tablespoon of oil you have 120 calories. And now if you look at oil and you look at sugar and you look at protein, with protein and sugar, you have half the amount per volume that you do of oil. So oil, oil is 9 calories per gram, whereas 4 calories per gram for protein and for sugar. So with that in mind, you can have a few tablespoons of, say, olive oil, which if you sit down in an Italian restaurant and you have that oil, that olive oil and Parmesan cheese, or you'll see that you can fill up on that and still be able to eat dinner. So over there to the left, you see oil in the stomach, doesn't fill up the stomach at all. If you go to the same amount, 500 calories of cheese, you see that, say if you took 6 or 7 slices of American cheese, that would be about 500 calories. That would barely stretch the stomach too. So you can load up. And then if meat, 500 calories meat, about 6 to 7 ounce grilled steak. And you still don't have a half full stomach. So that's why you can just keep eating. And then if you go to the last two there, potatoes, beans, and rice, if you eat 500 calories of that, you've almost filled your stomach with potatoes, beans, and rice. But then if you go to the far right, fruits and veggies, 500 calories of fruits and veggies, you are overfilling. I mean, you have no room for dessert, which is probably not a bad thing. So that's why you can find that this is your GLP-1 agonist, right? What do I mean by GLP? Your Wegovy, your Ozempic, people are running for these quick fixes, which have their risks, long-term and short, whereas fiber is your natural GLP-1 agonist that fills you, that gives you satiety, and at the same time is much healthier. And what's so healthy about fiber? That's what your gut bacteria thrives. I don't know if you've heard, but the gut microbiome is soaking up all kinds of research dollars now, because we've discovered that there's more to our colon than just taking out water and forming poop. There's this 2 to 3 pounds of bacteria in our colon that actually outperform in terms of genetics the influence on the rest of our body. There's something called short chain fatty acids and fibers, the fuel for that. And these go all over the body, including the brain and heart, and influence almost every physiologic aspect of life. And so fiber appears to be the secret. And 90+% of people in this country don't get in enough fiber. Fiber does more than just give you regular bowel movements. Fiber provides nutrients that transcend the bowel and keep us healthy. Now, if we go plant-based, many people are under the false impression that they can't afford it. There's a way to afford it if you have the know-how, and there are places on the internet you can get guidance on that. But you just think about it, the dollars you spend on doctor visits and procedures and medications, and they are going to get more expensive with what's going on now in this country, can be saved by eating plant-based. And so processed food is a key target here. Most diets that are successful with weight loss and influencing good health have this in common: getting rid of processed foods. Especially highly and ultra processed foods. But I want you to understand, what does that mean, processed foods? That means if you take an apple, for example, that's unprocessed. But if you chop it up or puree it and sometimes they throw in some sugar, that's the next level, minimally processed, especially the unsweetened variety. But then if you go another step and have apple juice, well, now you remove the fiber. It doesn't look like it did when it came out the ground at all. You may have added some preservatives, even some sugar, and now you've got a highly processed food. Go a little further to the right, you have your apple pie. I'm talking about the one that's in the refrigerator or freezer at the grocery store. Well, now that is loaded with a paragraph of chemicals if you look on the side of the box, and it may have some slices of real apple in it, but that's highly processed, right next door to ultra processed. Ultra processed may be that gummy bear, the candy, which has no apple in it. And so because of time, I'm gonna kind of race through this, but to the far right are highly processed foods, going from left to right. You got your potato chips up there in the right corner there. You got your Chicago mix, caramel corn, cheese popcorn. I mean, pretzels. These are all things we flock to, but they are killing us. The salt, the sugar, the fat, and the addictive nature of these foods, because they are made for us to want to come back to them. I'd like everyone in this venue to leave here with a clear understanding of the difference between plant-based and vegan. Many people mistakenly think that vegan is a diet. It's not. It's a social justice movement. It's where people say, okay, I don't want to be involved with consuming or buying anything that has to do with animal slaughter, animal abuse, or exploitation. So that means a vegan can have some Coca-Cola and some Oreo cookies because they don't have any animal products in them. The Oreo cookies, that white part doesn't have any milk in it. It's chemicals, but that's still 100% vegan. There are no animals being harmed. But the whole food plant-based person does not eat highly and ultra processed foods, or as well as egg, meat, and dairy. So there is a difference between whole food plant-based and vegan. And so, this probably looks appealing to a lot of people, but this is killing us. I was raised on bacon. I love the taste of it. I look at it and it still makes my mouth water a little bit. but but the problem with this is a processed meat. It's got a lot of nitrites in them. It's got a lot of sodium in it. It's got a ton of saturated fat. When we fry it, you get some trans fats in there. You're oxidizing the oil. And with every serving of it, you're getting a serving of something that increases cancer, particularly colon cancer, but also other cancers, and in addition, other ailments. I mean, such as hypertension, it drives that, heart attack, strokes, diabetes, kidney disease. And it's not limited to bacon, folks. That's your cold cuts, that's your hot dogs, that's your sausage, your ham, any of these cured meats. I know these are meats we probably all grew up eating and loving, and probably some of us still love them, but they're killing us. And dairy, yeah, I'm getting to another big one. The dairy products, that's an unnecessary source of sugar. Lactose is a sugar. 70% of this country and some 75% of African Americans don't digest it well. We have lactose intolerance. There's another percentage of people, especially younger people, that are allergic to it. The milk for a calf is so they can gain some 400 pounds in a short period of time. And that's not what we want to do, but that's what's happening in this world right now, in our world. And the foreign protein part can increase the likelihood of having diabetes. There are just so many reasons to let the calves have their milk. So I know I'm saying a lot of harsh stuff, breaking probably some hearts, but really, this is tough love. It's important to circumvent these foods that are killing us slowly, and eat foods that make us healthy. Think clearly and live longer and healthier. So, which side of the fence do we want to be on? I don't think you have to create Rome in a day. You can take it gradually, but we should all be thinking about ways to move to the right side of this slide, because otherwise we're going to be moving faster to our graves. So how do you do this? Um, Not enough time to go into detail, but you could start off with making a list of whole foods that you like. This was one I started in 2015, and I knew at that time I was averaging 3 to 4 servings of whole foods a day. I didn't focus on what I couldn't eat at that time. I was eating chicken and salmon and stuff like that. I just started with what I knew I should be eating every day. And that was, I went from averaging 3 to 4 servings to 5 for a week or two, and then 6, and then 7. Right now, I average 12 to 14 servings of plant-based foods daily. That leaves no room for all the junk and other stuff, nor a desire for it, because I feel a lot better not eating that stuff. And so you want to have a balanced plate with fruits, legumes, that's beans, whole grains, that's intact grains, and vegetables. And, water is the best thing to drink. And so since my time is running out here, I think I'm going to move on, and so we can get to the question and answer. We don't want to forget the herbs and spices. That's how you can get, the fact that you're missing that sodium. Sometimes I was a big salt person. I was one of those kind of people. You put food on the table, I put salt on it before I took my first bite. Got to get out of that. Salt's killing us too. And processed foods have a lot of salt. Generally, when you eat meat at a restaurant or make it at home, you're dealing with a lot of salt. But herbs and spices can take the place of that. When you rehabilitate your taste buds, you will not need or desire that high salt food. In fact, it'll turn you off. And then nice snack, if you're not allergic to them, nuts and seeds are fine. Those are healthy kinds of fats. You don't want to eat a whole bag at a time, but those are healthier fats than what you get in dairy products or in meat. And so a shameless plug here. I just published a book just 10, 12 days ago called Fearless Wellness. It's not just a diet book. It's the F stand. The Fearless is an acronym for food being first, that's first and foremost, that you make some changes, wholesale changes in your diet towards plant-based. But the E is for exercise, the A is for avoiding toxins, not just alcohol and tobacco, but those food toxins I was talking about too, those emulsifiers and dyes and preservatives. The R is for restorative sleep, 7 to 8 hours for most people, adults. The L is for lessening stress. That might be meditation, maybe yoga, mindfulness. The E is for engaging your mind. I'm 66 years old. I already told you I have parents that had dementia. I know I got those genes. And so, but I know that lifestyle changes can change the trajectory. And then the last two S's, social energy and spiritual connectivity. Being grounded, knowing that there's a higher power helps us get through some things. I'm proudly, I say that over the last 6 days, my book has been running at #1 in certain subcategories at Amazon, the medical nutrition section and the medicine and psychology section, #1 as of the top releases. And so I just say that because maybe maybe there's something in it for you. So again, thank you for inviting me to this venue. I hope I didn't go too fast. I know I was going a little fast at the end, and I welcome any questions you might have.
Dr.
Stop the
Thompson,
screen share.
this is very perfect. And I appreciate you for taking away all my favorite foods, my coffee, my apple pie. How can you do that? But this is very enlightening. And I took notes, and I'm going to make sure I study this book very carefully. Let me ask you a couple of questions as we start off. Uh, so you talked about not using caffeine through coffee. And I know there's some controversy that coffee is known to be a good antioxidant. And as long as you don't drink it to excess, can you comment on your thoughts about coffee, which is, of course, plant-based? And also the different types of nuts, peanuts versus walnuts and whatnot. Just comment on that in terms of calorie density.
Sure. Well, first of all, I didn't say that coffee was bad. I mentioned that when we did our Daniel fast, we said no coffee, and that was a religious fast that we were involved with. So that wasn't a nutritional thing. It just happened to be plant-based. But beans are really packed with nutrients, even coffee beans. So I do drink coffee, but because of my history of high blood pressure and because I am caffeine sensitive, I drink decaffeinated coffee. A special time, and I always watch the decaffeinated process. There's certain decaffeinated processes that are chemically involved that I do avoid. But coffee is fine. I mean, there are tons of antioxidants in coffee. What it was, chlorogenic acid is one of them that's been studied to a large degree. And but the problem with coffee in this country is people taint it. They drink their coffee with cream and sugar. So now you have 2 steps forward and 4 steps backwards.
Mm-hmm.
So I drink my coffee black, like I like my women. I don't say that when my wife's around. But yeah, coffee's fine as far as I'm saying. Unless you're caffeine sensitive, then you want to be careful. And again, you could get the decaf, but drink it black.
Well,
Or you could add soy milk to it, soy milk or plant-based milk. The tendencies to drive down the nutrients from being isolated by those little fat bubbles is not the same when you use a plant-based milk. So you can put some soy milk in it. Just leave out any dairy products, leave out the sugar. And then you're welcome, about the nuts. So yeah, nuts are very calorie dense no matter what nuts you have. But when you're eating whole food plant-based and you're not getting those calories from dairy and meat and egg, those fat calories, then you're getting a better quality of fat from nuts, which have what's called instead of having saturated fat, so much saturated fat in it, you're dealing with nuts that are monounsaturated, that has more monounsaturated fats in them. And so there is a spectrum of nut health. Walnuts, in my opinion, from what I've researched, walnuts are at the top because you get the omega-3. They don't have as much saturated fat as peanuts. They're not as addictive as peanuts. And so I put walnuts at the top. Omega-3 is something I'm very interested in having every day since both my parents had dementia. And so I want to get more natural sources of omega-3, even though I still take some supplement. But then, so the top nuts to me nutritionally are the walnuts, the almonds, pistachios. Um, those are the top ones. Not that any of the nuts are necessarily bad, because they've shown that really people that eat almost any of the nuts tends to align with a healthier and longer life, interestingly. But you just have to be careful, A, if you're allergic, and B, if you're really trying to lose weight, then you don't want to go to town too much on the nuts. How much nuts are safe? Dr. Greger, Dr. Neil Barnard, very much renowned nutrition experts say about much that fits in your hand. That's about an ounce. That's the when you put it in your hand, it doesn't get past to the first knuckles there in terms of daily.
Thank you so much. Dr. Walks?
Thank you, Dr. Maxey. Dr. Thompson, I'm with Dr. Maxey on the um, taking away all my foods, but I guess since you didn't put Popeyes on there, I guess that's still okay. But but seriously, I think that um, it is very important for us to talk to us about this in a way that is positive. And I like what you said about not necessarily taking away stuff, but adding so much of the good stuff that you don't really have as much room for the bad stuff. One of the worst things is to get up and be hungry. And then all of a sudden it's 11, 12 o'clock and you haven't eaten yet, then anything goes. So I think and I actually wanted to talk with you or ask you about that because we hear about different sorts of intermittent fasting and the time to eat. And should you eat two big meals? Should you eat five little meals during the day? What about the timing of eating this good food?
Yes. Well, the nutrition experts say the ideal is you eat like a king or queen in the morning, and you eat like a prince or princess in the afternoon, and you eat like a pauper in the evening. Okay. That's the paradigm that's supposedly in terms of looking at digestive health and all that. Who does that? I don't do that. What I do make sure, I just can't fathom eating dinner in the morning. But what I do advocate is not eating late. Like I have multiple reasons because I already mentioned I have reflux and hiatal hernia, so I have multiple motivations to not eat late. But even if I didn't, in terms of the health of your gastric your microbiome and the physiologic actions of your gut, it's good if you have that dinner by or before 6, and that you don't overeat. Um, so there is intermittent fasting. I have engaged in that. I've never done it on a daily basis, just 2 to 3 days a week. I did for about 2 years straight. Then when I moved to Sacramento from Chicago, I kind of got all off track, trying to get my way back. But I liked doing it because I found when I did that, the days I'm not on the fast, I don't feel that hooked to having to have a snack. I mean, if you can go 16 hours without eating, then when you're not fasting on other days, going 8 or 12 hours doesn't seem like anything, because you've gone 16 hours without eating, just drinking water. And so I liked how I felt with that. I felt I was more productive on my fasting days. I wasn't worried about what food I needed to eat or anything. I could just work right through it and just drink. Now, it takes a little adaptive period for that. But once you get past that week or 2 or 3 adapting to it, it's a beautiful thing. And so I'm a big fan of intermittent fasting, but paired with healthy eating. Clearly, it's been shown that people that intermittent fast and don't change what they eat, and they keep going to Popeyes and places like that, they don't get the weight loss, they don't get the extra bowel influence with the microbiome, they don't get the insulin resistance coming down, they don't get the mental fogginess going away. So yeah, there's a way to do it, but you want to pair it, and you don't want to try to do two things, too much at once. If you're just branching out to try to eat healthier, focus on that first. Don't add in the fasting yet. And you have to be careful in certain other situations. You have diabetes or you have eating disorders or things like that. You want to have some guidance for that because you can get into some other red zones.
Thank you.
Is
Sure.
Dr. Hines or Dr. Lawson on?
Dr. Hines and Dr. Lawson are on. Dr.
Hey,
Hines is unmuted.
Dr. Lawson, my
Hello.
friend.
Hello, Dr. Hines.
Hello. So, thank you, Dr. Thompson. My question is around how can, as we enter this age of so many people speaking on nutrition, what can the layperson, average people, look for in trying to figure out who is a vetted, knowledgeable person in this space? Are we looking for credentials? What should we be looking for to know that the person who we're listening to is someone who we should be listening to?
Yeah, I do. I think you should look for all those things. Credentials, yeah. Do they have some credentials? I particularly like to listen to people that are plant-based that have a feel for traditional medicine as well as alternative medicine. So the ones that I have a list of mentors in my book to refer people to online mostly. And they are people I highly respect that have the credentials, that have the experience, that walk the walk themselves, that look like they walk the walk,
Mhm.
And I think all of those things count. One thing I noticed in the space is there are not a lot of people of color. But people do like to, I mean, I don't have to tell this audience, people like to hear from people that look like them and be treated by people that look like them. Well, there is, as you saw on my slide, there's Dr. Baxter Montgomery, who's all over the internet, YouTube, in Louisville. He used to be in Chicago. There's Dr. Kim Williams, a cardiologist at Plant Based. He turned more than half his cardiology staff into vegans while he was at Rush in Chicago, head of their Department of Cardiology. Now he's head of Department of Medicine at University of Louisville in Kentucky. He's also editor in chief, I think, of this lifestyle journal. And there's also, let's see. So we have a number of people. There's just a handful. There's Dr. Terry Mason in Chicago. But I think when you hear from these people and they have credentials and they have experience, they're walking the walk, then I think that's what helps.
Thank you. And Dr. Lawson?
Yeah, excellent book. I finished reading it, and I think
Wow.
one of the points that's interesting, he and I in the same group, is teach you how to write in a way that people will read you. I finished this book in one setting, and the reason is that it's well written and it's written in a way that you can you not know the facts, and you can process the material very well. One point that I think this book emphasized that a lot of the stuff that some of the folks put on TV and YouTube and others is that it doesn't go out and says, eat this product and you will be turned into super person. And if you go to Texas, you hear about the super beets, and if you go to DC, you hear about the super fish and other places. And I think you may want to say some more about this idea about eating one type of food is I think, a real problem. I just saw a case of there's been a couple of deaths of people from caffeine overdose. I didn't know you could get caffeine overdose till I saw how much some of the milligrams of caffeine they put in some of these energy drinks. So yeah, you can kill yourself with this stuff, or even some of these things are supposed to be brain things when in fact a lot of these things don't even cross the blood-brain barrier. So it's not sure why they even try to advertise this stuff. And you might say something about eating game. I'm from the country, and one of the things I found out was at least in the area I was there, a lot of folks came down with there was a slow virus in deer because one group just only ate deer. And so everybody in the family got dementia. So I appreciate you talking about the idea of looking at, I won't call them fad diets, but diets that overcompensate and take over everything versus balance.
Well, the last word you said is the important one, balance. What I would pair with that word of balance is diversity in what you eat. I mean, diversity comes up in so many different settings and levels as being a good thing, and it's certainly a good thing in the nutrition area. And well, how do we know? Well, there was something called the American Gut Project. Anyone can look that up online. The American Gut Project, where they examine thousands of people's poop to see, well, what's the difference in one person's poop that's healthy versus another? A person that's obese, a person that's diabetic, a person that suffered from COVID. They examined all this and they came up with some interesting conclusions that people that eat 30 or more different plants a week are healthier. So you want to eat a variety of foods. You don't want to be a reductionist, which is what conventional medicine tends to make us do. You know, we went on the vitamin A scheme for a while. That got us in trouble. People were having heart disease. Or went on the vitamin E scheme for a while. We found out, well, you need all of these different tocopherol subcomponents for the vitamin E to be healthy. You can't just isolate one or two and put it in a pill at high doses. You actually make someone sicker. So this reductionist approach has gotten us in trouble. Dr. T. Colin Campbell has been most outspoken about that. But so diversity, in terms of getting back to what you were saying, diversity is what's crucial, and we should try to eat a variety of plants with the balance being that plate I showed, that you know you have your veggies, especially cruciferous vegetables are very important, those green leafy vegetables. And then you have your fruit. Eat a variety of different fruits. Kiwi tends to conserve your DNA integrity. I mean, there's advantage to oranges. There's advantage to a lot of different fruits, besides just giving you some healthy sugars. There's also, you know, whole grains, attack grains that are loaded with all kinds of protein. You know, essential 9 proteins are in all of them. I used to say, well, you're gonna not get enough of this amino acid. There are complete proteins in all of these plants. So don't be fooled. They've discovered that recent nutrition science. And then the last segment are the legumes. And we look at those blue zones. People, I think you may be familiar with the blue zones. What do they all have in common? They ate beans. That was the common denominator. They also had good social structure and spiritual connectivity and movement too. Relationships, those are important non-nutrient factors. But they ate healthy. They ate very little meat. Meat was just an occasional. In most of those 5 places around the country, meat was once a month, twice a month. You know, they weren't vegans though. But they live longer than anyone else in this country and anyone else in the world. In these 5 places, only one in this country, in Loma Linda, California, the Seventh-day Adventists, and they actually live the longest of the groups, and they ate the least amount of meat of the groups.
That's very, very, very good. Dr. Walks, anything in our chat?
I am computer challenged today. I don't know if Dr. Hines can see the chat. I'm on my cell phone.
Dr. Hines?
Yes, so there's a question about turmeric and black pepper. Is that useful for immune support? And then can I just piggyback on that question? Because there's a whole lot of things, right? Like, oh, ginger and garlic and cinnamon and whatever. If we were trying to incorporate those things, how do you do that in a reasonable way?
Okay. Ginger, garlic, cinnamon. Everything you've said is good. Everything. You know, not one thing, everything. So sprinkling that black pepper, especially when you crush those peppercorns, you know, right at the time, instead of something that's been grounded 3 months ago, you're getting some antioxidants, you're getting some nutrients. Turmeric, powerful anti-inflammatory. It really parallels Advil. I mean, without the gastric side effects. And so now that doesn't mean take tablespoons of turmeric. There are situations where even these products may get you, even if it's ground organic turmeric. If you have kidney stones and you're taking a tablespoon of that every day, but you probably wouldn't, it's not the most tasty thing to do. But if you were doing that, it may increase your kidney stone issue. So there are situations people should look into these with anything they're going to be taking regularly. But usually when you're dealing with small amounts of these combined with other nutrients, you usually don't get into trouble. But turmeric is very anti-inflammatory. It's something also a couple of plant-based neurologists advocate to prevent Alzheimer's, which I'm very interested in. So I put turmeric in my coffee actually, and I do one little sprinkle, one little pinch of pepper, because pepper enhances the absorption of the turmeric, 1,000-fold almost. So yeah, so that turmeric, black pepper, ginger, absolutely. I love to have some ginger. I throw it in my smoothie. I'll throw some ginger in my I'll have ground ginger that I'll throw in my oatmeal. You can sprinkle this stuff on salad. There's all kinds of ways. If you make a salad dressing, I make homemade salad dressing because commercial has too much salt, fat, and sugar. So I make my dressing every time. I smuggle it into restaurants if I have an advanced warning. I'll smuggle it. It's so easy to make your own sauce. I mean, if you have some apple cider vinegar and some balsamic vinegar, you can make all kinds of dressings, just rotating different fruit, throwing some mustard in there, whatever. Garlic, absolutely. Garlic has something called allicin. There's this incredible antioxidants in garlic. You, you know, garlic is a wonderful addition. And I'm not talking about that garlic powder. I'm not talking about highly processed stuff. The natural is better. But even if you have garlic powder it's not tainted with chemicals or other type of processing materials, that's the next best thing. That's fine. And cinnamon, absolutely. Cinnamon can help control your blood sugars. It can help lower your blood pressure, your cholesterol. Now, Ceylon cinnamon, that's spelled with a C, Ceylon, I believe, is the healthier one as opposed to Saigon or cassia cinnamon. And some of those have some other, I can't remember the specifics on them, some other downsides, but it's that Ceylon cinnamon. Now, when you go to Ceylon cinnamon, it's not going to taste like your usual McCormick store-bought cinnamon, folks. So just be aware of that. But it's very healthy. And so I hope I answered those questions for you.
So I understand cooking with them, but also like if you wanted to, you could go out and buy supplements of almost all of those things. So are we talking about turmeric tablets and garlic tablets? And that's kind of where I was going at, because I think we could all get carried away.
Yeah. I was thinking the more natural forms, the better. The more fresh garlic you use when you cook is better. But I'm saying the next best thing would be garlic powder or something like that. I don't, garlic tablets, if you're interested in doing that, it's fine. I can't tell you about the pros and cons of that. I used to do that. I used to be a big supplement taker and I would take garlic tablets too. But my wife didn't like that. But anyway, it's one of those things. And then cinnamon, most of us, I was thinking of ground cinnamon. Mostly they have those cinnamon sticks. But more importantly, I think is Ceylon. If you choose the Ceylon over whatever cinnamon you use, that you're going to have a healthier cinnamon exposure. Black pepper, we don't have to worry about that. That's usually you're usually sprinkling that anyway. And turmeric, you can do fresh turmeric, but really studies that have shown its anti-inflammatory impact has been with capsules they put in ground turmeric. And so I do use ground turmeric when I put it in, curries, I'll make some curries and things like that. There's so much you can do, but yeah, you can do it either way, but try not to use over processed stuff. When is it over processed? When you look on that label and you see all kinds of other ingredients. I get turned off when I look at anything and I see anything more than the actual food I'm looking for in it. And then if it has one or two other things, is it acceptable to me? If I don't know it, I'm not familiar with it, it's generally not.
This has been so great. I appreciate you so much. I'm going to actually ask you to come back and do more.
I'd love to.
You feel limited. This has been great. I'm going to do something I don't normally do, but we have a very bright technical expert, and I'm going to ask Simon if he has a comment or a question. I know he's going to be mad at me.
No, I don't. It's a very good talk. Very insightful.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So Dr.
Since he didn't have a question, I do want to leave this thought on people's mind, and that is that if you take any of these steps I'm talking about, diet, lifestyle, it makes a difference. It just move in that direction, and often it becomes self-fulfilling. And so that's why I think it's these venues are so important, because people will take different things away, and that's an important part of progress over perfection, folks.
Is Dr. Sharada? Dr. Hines, is Dr. Sharada? I can't see my screen.
Yes.
Is she unmuted?
Yes.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm actually, how you doing, Dr. Mike, Maxie and all?
How you doing?
I'm actually undergoing a treatment right now, so I missed part of it, but the part I heard was excellent. And I think I'm waiting for, what I'll do is go and review the tape, but we all know that the natural food is better. And I really like the part about you don't really have to be vegan. You can just, because you need the meat for the B12. And a lot of people get into trouble by going 100% vegan and not supplementing the B12. You get B12 from meat, but you don't need a 18-ounce steak to do that every time you eat.
No, you don't. Actually,
Right.
you don't even need a 6-ounce steak, actually. But because you can get all
Exactly.
you can get all your B12 by supplement, and it can be checked by blood tests. And animals don't make it either, actually. B12 is made by bacteria, and some of these animals, because they eat from the ground, will have it more in their meat. But even, 80% of cows are factory farms, so they're not really eating a lot from the grass. They have to get supplement too. So really, you supplement us. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I don't like to leave a venue without people understanding if they do go all the way with this and they eat mostly or 99% plant-based, they do need to take B12, but so does anybody over 50. Even if you don't do anything with your meat, you keep eating it. We don't strip it off the food as well when we get past 50. So you're supposed to take B12 supplement when you're 50. And, half the world's taking these PPIs, these proton pump inhibitors for gastric acid, and they decrease your absorption of B12. Half people on diabetes medicine, those on the metformin, they aren't going to absorb B12 as readily. So a lot of people need to be taking B12, but especially if you're plant-based.
And I know you mentioned vitamin D, right? And the significance of most of the people in the United States are vitamin D deficient, and everybody needs to be supplementing that. It's really one of the most powerful vitamins that we have. It's been demonstrated to be a hormone.
Well, it is a
Vitamin D.
hormone.
Yeah.
It is a hormone. And we it's kind of misnamed as a vitamin, but it's a hormone that most of us don't get enough of. And then, our dark skin, those of us that have dark skin, tends to block some of those rays, so we don't readily make it as much, and we're not all basking in the sun for hours. So there are a lot of reasons vitamin D should be kind of a staple vitamin, and we should have our vitamin D level checked, because even if we're at the lower limit of normal, I think it warrants us taking more supplements to get it back up there.
Is Dr. Dawes on by any chance? Is Dr. Lisa Dawes on? Well,
I don't see her now.
we're at the top of the hour, so I'm going to ask our gracious speaker to have concluding words, and then our co-moderators. Dr. Thompson, you could leave us with some words until your next talk with us, which I hope will be shortly. Dr. Thompson?
Okay. Well, I just want to thank you again for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. There's always an exchange in these kind of venues. There are wonderful questions. And I'll just leave with a quote from one of my mentors that I already mentioned to you, Dr. Kim Williams, who made a quote that I love. And he said that he does not have a fear of dying. He just does not want to have a hand in it. And I feel exactly the same way. And it starts with knowledge. And so thank you.
Thank you. You want to just give us a plug on that book again?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for prompting me. It's called Fearless Wellness. Transform your life one step at a time. It's right now on Amazon. I'm trying to get it on another medium. I know Amazon isn't in our spotlight right now for a lot of us. So I want to have another another source of published printing. But yeah, Fearless Wellness. And there's an ebook form, there's a paperback form, and in another month there will be an audio form.
All right.
On Audible. Thank you.
Very good. Dr. Lawson. Comments, Dr. Lawson?
Dr. Lawson's on mute.
Okay. Then let's go to Dr. Hines.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Thompson. This was an excellent presentation. It was very easy to understand. And I think for me, the take home was, like you said, progress, not perfection. I appreciate that when we have these, there are small things that I can try that. I can try that. So I appreciate your transparency in your own journey as far as how you chose to make your changes. So thank you for sharing, and thank you for being with us. And I look forward to our next talk, because you hit on some things at the end about some of the medications that frequently people are taking and where those impacts are. So we could have a whole talk on that.
Yeah. Dr. Hines, how come you always look so young and vibrant?
It's the camera, right?
Because she is young.
Dr. Walk.
First of all, thanks again, Dr. Thompson. And I am going to break the rules and go on Amazon and get my copy of Fearless Wellness.
Thank you.
Because I think it's important. I really do. I think it's important that we do what we can. And my concluding comment is, and I think Dr. Lawson may have been wanting to mention something along these lines as well. As physicians, there are things we do when we're trying to fix whatever we're trying to fix or help, that cause problems. For example, as a psychiatrist, many of our psychiatric medicines can cause weight gain, which can mess up the whole metabolic thing. And so, as Dr. Hines was mentioning, another talk about how on the physician side we can be aware of what we're trying to help while we're hurting stuff. And then on the layperson side, when your doctor does prescribe stuff for you, how do you go beyond just the side effects? Because long-term weight gain is not really listed as a side effect often, but it can be something that impacts folks when they're taking medication. So glad to know that there are medical doctors who are looking closely at the nutrition part of the world and trying to keep us healthy. So yeah, man, I'm looking forward to you coming back.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna try to increase my nuts and everything and decrease my time at Popeyes. So
All
don't
right.
hate me because I'm struggling.
I think you need some flaxseed, Doctor.
Yeah, definitely flaxseed, omega-3, those lignans, all kinds of good stuff in flaxseed. But you got to grind them.
Okay.
They just come out. They just come out the same if you don't grind them.
Did Dr. Lawson get unmuted yet?
Not yet. Dr. Lawson is my buddy, Dr. Lawson. See, we can't unmute Dr. Lawson because he's going to start talking about eating bison and all the other kind of stuff. Oh, he's unmuted now.
Uh,
And that's exactly what I'm going to tell about. What are your thoughts about bison and eating ostrich, especially since bison now is getting fatty as well, and also about eating certain kinds of fish meats which supposedly have too much mercury.
Well, I put it this way. I see what you choose to eat as being like a health savings account. And in my health savings account, I'm not going to make that kind of deposit because of the saturated fat, the cholesterol, and trans fat. And because it's an opportunity cost I'm missing now, where those same calories from that bison or that ostrich egg, I could have put in some fiber that my gut microbiome would have appreciated. And I'd come off being fuller and more satisfied, not so much consciously. I'm talking about the satisfied from the standpoint that fiber tends to hit those GLP-1 receptors more than that ostrich egg or that bison. And so I know I'm going to have a better savings account in that setting.
Well,
Amen.
thank you so much. I'm so glad that I met you through Dr. Lawson. I'm glad you're on. I want you to send me the name of that book writer that you and Dr. Lawson work with, and you can get the credit.
Yeah.
But we'd like to invite you back again.
Wait, who's getting the credit?
I think you are.
Oh, okay.
I think you, but I'm not going to fight Dr. Lawson. He's the boss.
Nah, I'm just kidding. Go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted.
Okay, so thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. We can find this on YouTube. We have archived 5 years worth of this, but the past several months have been all on nutrition, and everything's been very consistent. So thank you again. It's been an honor to have you. Thank you, Simon, for helping us. Have a great Sunday.
Good day, everyone.
Good day.